Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers
with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family.
I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Box Office Bingers, where the odds may ever be in your favor, Ernesto.
I tried to do it in my whistling. I was trying to whistle. I'm very excited. I'm also weirdly nervous.
Yeah.
Because we have a special guest. My wife, Hannah Santos.
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Are you excited to talk about the Hunger Games today?
Yes, very excited.
We are reviewing the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds Snakes, starring Tom Blythe, Rachel Zegler, Viola Davis, Jason Schwartzman, Peter Dinklage, Hunter Schafer, and Jose Andres Rivera. Directed by Francis Lawrence, who directed Hunger Games: Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, I Am Legend, Red Sparrow, and Slumberland. Written by Michael Arndt, who wrote Hunger Games: Catching Fire, Toy Story 3, Oblivion, and Little Miss Sunshine, and Michael Leslie, who wrote the 2016 Assassin's Creed, based on a novel by Suzanne Collins, which I have read, all four of them. You know, I've mentioned it many times before. Out of all the YA dystopian post-apocalyptic futuristic books like this one and Maze Runner, like this one is my favorite series.
That's and I know that you've been reading. I know this. Did you reread the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? Because I know you read it, or at least you listened to it like a while ago.
When it first came out, I listened to it. When it first came out, I listened to it. And then, yes, I actually just finished the book yesterday as I was cutting the grass.
As I was cutting the grass. You know, it's a good time to listen to a book when you're cutting grass.
Absolutely.
How can you listen? How can you hear it? How loud is your mower?
It's an electric mower. It's not like super loud, but.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
I'm about to say because like
the
they're
AirPod
battling between like.
It's not, but the headphones go pretty loud, so and they're the noise canceling ones, so it's fine.
But before we get started, I have to say this right here. Hannah,
Yes.
has been the what do I call it? The one that's actually allowing us to do this podcast for the last 4 years.
That's true.
Thank you, Matt.
Yes.
Because without her, I don't know why you even let Ernesto just go sit in this room and talk. Just because we're just talking about movies the entire time. She's the real hero.
I love it.
Managing all the kids. It's. I would like to thank you for allowing me to do this for the last 4 years. It's been a lot of fun.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
But I love it. I think this is so cool. I love everything about podcasting and talking about things that make, that interest you and make you happy. You know what? I love it. It's awesome.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Eli.
And
Our Eli.
It only took you 4 years to get on the podcast, but we're glad that we found a movie that you're excited to talk about. And from what I heard from Ernesto, you got a lot of notes.
I have a lot to talk about, yes.
That's why I don't have any notes, because I feel like she's going to hit a lot of our points.
I feel like just within the last, 2-3 weeks, we're slowly getting the family onto the show. We had Julian on a few weeks ago, and he also had a lot of notes. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure if he even read, honestly, did he even have notes on him? Because
no,
I think he just kind of just...
Oh, that's awesome, yeah. He did really good.
That sounds like
Julie.
Julie.
He really did.
Yeah, that was
really
one of the episodes she actually listened to.
Oh, stop.
No, it's okay. Megan doesn't listen
yeah,
to
it's
this
okay.
at all. Like,
it's okay.
I'll be surprised if she even I'll be surprised if she even mentions anything about the show. I was like, oh, that's nice. You said you actually listened, or you like something on Instagram or something. Every now and then it pops up. But yeah, don't feel bad for not listening. because Megan is listening. So it's
I
all
mean,
good. Also,
to be honest, we're surprised when anyone listens. Like, oh, you
That's
listen?
very
Oh, you actually listen to it? Oh, okay,
a lot more
thanks.
people listen than you think.
Sure.
Also, Megan is like sometimes when I'm out here, because I take over the entire living room and the dining room and the kitchen. So like it's just better. It's better for me to be here than it is in the office. So sometimes when she's home, I try to do it when she's not home. But when she is home, she basically gets like a live show. Well, a one-sided live show because she can't hear you. So all of a sudden it's just quiet, and then she thinks it's over, and then she's like, oh, blah 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 blah, and they go, okay, they're still going. And then every now and then, like when she hears wrapping up, she's already in here in the kitchen, and she's like, I am so hungry right now. I need to take 3 hours. You got to make these shorter.
No.
That's not how it works.
That's we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we got a lot to get out.
So, but also, again, thank you, Hannah, for coming on to the show. And I'm even just surprised that I mentioned earlier that this is even, like, you two are on the screen right now. Because, like, there's so much sometimes happening behind the scenes. And so I'm just happy to see you both here. I feel like it's a long time coming.
Yeah. Yes. Hopefully not the last time.
Oh.
Hopefully not the last.
Oh, I'm coming back.
Oh.
Oh.
Dang.
I got to get my Bitmoji.
Before we started, she's like, well, can I pick my Bitmoji? I'm like, Bitmoji? What are you talking about, Bitmoji?
That was like year 1 box office pictures.
Yeah. She's like, I still want the Bitmoji.
So, yes, it will be there. The people know because they already clicked on the episode, so they'll see it, even though I haven't made it yet. But your Bitmoji will be on there.
Can I please tell the story about the one time behind the scenes about you being in the room? So when y'all first started recording, he was in our room, our bedroom, and that's where I could not go in the bedroom, to do anything because it was small. We lived in a townhome, and so we were all outside. We were all in the living room, and I was trying to keep the kids quiet, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I hear Ernesto loud as can be. And that's what I said! And we all just started laughing. And now to this day, we sit there and say, that's what I said! So when he was recording.
Yes, I hear about it. I hear about that all the time. All the time I hear about that. She tells me about that.
Good times. Good times.
Oh my God. This is going to be a fun one. All right. So before we dive into the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we are going to be diving into a fun segment that's called Whatcha Watchin. So Hannah, you are our guest. We'll start with you. What have you been watching?
So first of all, we've been watching the Fall of the House of Usher. We haven't finished it. We have a few episodes left. But so far, this show has been quite a thrill ride. Mm-hmm. Let's say I don't even know where to start without spoiling anything. But Roderick Usher is the dad, and it takes place in his old home. We think we haven't finished it, so we haven't figured everything out yet. And he's sitting there talking to an old friend that's a police officer, investigator of the whole thing. And what I really like about it is that he sees the dead. He sees the deceased of his children. Mm-hmm. While he is going through each story of what happened to each of them, they appear in the middle or in the beginning of the story. And while he's telling the story. And the one that sticks out the most about all the jump scares of the kids showing up when he's telling the story was the police officer was sitting there, and all of a sudden you see blood in his stomach, and it's spreading across his white shirt, all across his whole entire shirt, and it's red. And that was one of the children's entry scenes. Yeah,
I would say that Mike Flanagan, the creator, he just has a way with horror. Even from in your face jump scares to very subtle horror where it's something in the background where perfect where he's talking to the detective and he's standing behind and he's telling him that there's something behind him. He's like, I'm not going to turn around. You're not going to get me to turn around. I'm not going to fall for that power move. He's like, okay. And then you turn, and then you're looking at the detective, and then you see somebody walk behind him in the background. And it's like stuff like
Yeah.
he's like so good at stuff like that, or even stuff like that where it's like a jump scare in your face.
It's really because I finished the series, and I will say that part of the fun of it is that you made a point, like, you think it's in his house, you do find out where it is, and I do think it's so that's something to look forward to.
Okay.
think that
I
was
didn't
a
even.
thing,
Yeah, me neither. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so that's also important. But I love, and we've talked about this before about Mike Flanagan many times on the show, but he, to Ernesto's point, he has such a good way with horror that I feel like he found a way just to move past the jump scares. It's not about that. Like, he found different ways to make horror things I didn't even think of before. And he was actually, through Ernesto's recommendation of Hill House, between, like, me watching Hill House made me want to watch horror movies, and that was a genre I always avoided. But it was Mike Flanagan to tell me that horror is more than just, gore and jump scares. There's actual story behind it. So then I was like, you know what? Let me give these horror movies a chance. And Ernesto would know after many years, at least 2 or 3 years now, I've been slowly getting into certain franchises. I just finished all the Chucky's this year. I did, like, Nightmare on Elm Street last year, and we're getting our way through them. But, like, it opened the door to horror. And so, like, this House of the Fall of the House of the Usher felt like this to me is his masterpiece.
I agree. Like, I think I talked about it where Haunting on Hill House was more horror, and Bly Manor was more like a sad family story, and then Midnight Mass was like religious horror, like, because it was.
Yeah.
And then you saw Midnight Club, which I think is just like maybe like a YA, like a youth,
It's a YA,
like a YA horror, like for kids, like not for kids, but maybe more for like teens. And where this one is like in a culmination of everything he's done to like put it all together, and it makes sense. Whereas like you want to build up, obviously he has a deep respect for Edgar Allan Poe. You could just see by the care he put into this project to how much he like maybe looks to him for inspiration for what he's doing. Like without even like looking up interviews, you can just feel it in his work.
And we talked about the other night as well with this TV show is that you didn't even have to really show the scenes of what happened to his children. That he was such a great the writer of this show was so detailed in him telling the story about what happened to each of his children that you didn't even really need to see all the scenes of everything. You could literally just sit in the same room and have him tell the story there.
And then, like, it's funny because you can look at it from two perspectives for people in that world where, like, to him, he's actually seeing the dead, and like whereas someone on the outside, they can just see that, oh, well, this is a man just stricken by grief. So he thinks he's seeing all his kids. Like, he's not actually seeing it, but nobody's really questioning it because they just see him as like, this is how he's grieving. Like, he thinks like he's seeing his kids wherever he goes. And then we're just seeing the other side of that where it's both things. Like, yeah, he is grieving and seeing them, but it's also like the added horror layer is like of them actually being there. And we don't know. I mean, whoever this woman, whoever,
we don't know.
We don't know intentionally. They're being very vague about who she is and her connection. I'm assuming for a reason, and I'm assuming we'll find out somewhere towards the end exactly who she is.
Yeah, and you kind of do. I still think with her character, there's still a level of mystery that is left for the viewer to decide, but you do get clarity, but also retains the mystery, which I do like about that, because it's like, oh, okay, I get the idea, but you didn't tell me right in my face exactly what it is. So you get that to look forward to as well. But what I also like is like kind of what Hannah was saying, like these stories are so detailed. Remember, he was never there for any of those incidences. So, and I think he said toward the beginning, because the detective asked him, like, how do you know this? And like, they told me. So like, he's being haunted by his children, and I guess through his eyes, they're telling him the story of how they died. And that's even more haunting now that I think about it.
Yeah, he's like, or I wonder if they're having him relive it. Like if he's having like, maybe they're telling him, but maybe through whatever supernatural means, maybe he's actually living those moments with them. Because if you notice, there's times where he like grabs his chest, almost like he's feeling like what they went through.
Right. Yeah. And then also, every time you see it, like the visions through the detective of, like Hannah was saying, like the blood on his chest and stuff like that. But then, I mean, it's how far are you? How far are you guys? How many episodes do you got left? Maybe one.
We just did the we're on 6. The last episode we saw is with the beating heart.
So I think
got it.
Victorian. Yeah. The doctor who had the apes.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The episode with the beating heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the last one.
That was the last one. And
okay, yeah.
And another this one popped out of mine, but another really good scene that I really liked is how he was at their funeral. And it was the three kids' funeral, and at the very end, when he looked back up at the front, all 3 of them were standing there looking at him.
Yeah.
In their last deceased.
In like how they were when they died.
Form. Yeah.
And that was that part of like him seeing them and nobody else seeing them too.
Yeah, it's I can't wait for you guys to finish it because it's a great. I think it also just sticks the landing like really hard.
Ooh.
Like I think we've said this many times before, like you can have a great story, but if you don't have a solid ending, then sometimes the story gets diluted a little bit. And in my opinion, I think this one really sticks the landing. So like I think like I said, like Mike Flanagan went out on a high note leaving Netflix, and now Amazon Prime has gotten him, so Netflix is taking a big loss here.
They are.
A huge loss with that, but I can't wait. Like this for me, like this solidified. Even though I felt like Mike Flanagan can do anything, I feel like after watching this, he can truly do anything he wants, and I feel like I'm on board for it, whatever it is.
Now, would you want to see him keep creating something original, or would you want to see him try to be attached to a big IP?
Well, it's interesting because technically, like the Midnight Club and the Fall of the House of the Usher isn't original. Like he adapted those short stories and made them into this what felt original. So I feel like he's been adapting quite some time. He also did like an original adaptation sequel to it was Doctor Sleep, but it was The Shining, a sequel to The Shining. So like he's been around the world of that, but I almost kind of want him to, as much as I love him in this world right now, I do, like, for example, like, how would you do a Marvel movie? Like, what does that look like? Like, can you bring that level of intensity and great storytelling into a world like that? I think that he is prime right now to even be in DC when they're looking for great creators to do that. I don't think he would, though. But I know that he's also attached to do an adaptation of the Dark Tower series, which is an adaptation again from Stephen King. So he's still there.
Because that's going to be a series, though. That's not going to.
I think I don't know if it's a film or a series. It wasn't clear. But he's also adapting another novel right now from Stephen King. I forgot the name of it, but it's going to be starring Tom Hiddleston and Mark Hamill. So,
and man, Mark Hamill was he was so good in this. Like, so, just so different. I was like, that's Luke Skywalker. How crazy is that?
Yeah. Like, it's like, I feel like that this is like, it's like, 'cause I know he's also famous for being the voice of Joker. And I just feel like this is like a gritty guy who's seen some things. It's almost like if Joker went on retirement, but he's not telling you he's a Joker, and that's what we're getting.
So
right?
The project it's a film. It's called The Life of Chuck. It's got Tom Hiddleston, Mark Hamill, Karen Gillian, Jacob Tremblay, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. Like, it's got a really good cast. Yeah, it's a new book that's going to be based off his book. Well, I guess that's another book I'm going to have to read. So add that one to the list.
But yeah, I mean, what he's doing right now, he's the best in the game, for sure.
And if you've never seen the movie Hush, which is also on Netflix, his movie is great. It's so
I need to. I've never seen it.
It's so. And what's funny is that his wife, who's also in it, I think she's writing a book, and what she's writing is called Midnight Mass, which turns out to be his show later.
That's funny.
I was like, what a weird callback.
I don't know if you guys gotten to this point yet, but there is an Easter egg in the Fall of the House of the Usher where they're watching Netflix and they scroll past his movie Gerald's Game on the home screen. Like they just finished watching a movie, and then like, what else can we watch? And then you see Gerald's Game, which was directed by Mike Flanagan. That's
Oh,
on
that
Netflix.
is so fun.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Didn't even. Oh, I haven't even seen that. Maybe it's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys got there yet, but it was like in the second half of the season.
Oh, okay, no, I don't
But yeah,
think
but
we're there
keep an eye out for it because I thought it was a fun Easter egg that he did as well. Anything else you've been watching?
So yes, we actually watched the Scary Movies to Tell in the Dark the other night. So this is my second time seeing it, and I felt like the first. I just think it's such a great kids scary movie.
Yeah.
We were talking about how a lot of the parts in the scary stories they don't show you what's actually happening. You know, to keep it rated PG.
Yeah.
You know,
you don't see many of the
yeah,
deaths
you don't
at
many
all.
see of the, but in the book, you know, it goes into more detail. And you know, I only vaguely remember the stories because I used to read this when I was growing up. That was one of the scary books that I enjoyed reading. Emily and I, my sister Emily, her and I used to read these stories, and I remember the one. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because I'm just listening to you talk.
Yeah,
I'll just look at you over here.
Okay,
so
look at me over there.
She's like, don't look at me.
For those just listening, I looked at Hannah and she like stopped talking. Sorry, I'll look at you on the screen.
That's okay. The Harold story is the one that scared me the most.
The Scarecrow.
The Scarecrow. So
that was a good scene, and I guess and I remember not really liking it. It was fine. I enjoyed it better, but I think this goes back to what me and you have talked about. Like maybe certain movies are meant to be watched with other people to enjoy them.
Sure.
Like watching them with other people brings just like another level of enjoyment. Because if somebody else's enjoyment, because then now you're like, well, like what are they enjoying? Like, and then you just to try to be a part of it. Like you find yourself, I like you're more forgiving especially when you're watching stuff with kids.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we've talked about this many times as well, but I think, and I'm actually going to dive into this a little bit later in my What You're Watching, but like it's all about the experience.
Yes.
Like the movie could be bad, but if you had a fun experience, then I feel like you're more forgiving in certain areas, as if maybe you were watching the movie alone and you're actually paying attention to everything, and then you're more critical when certain things didn't kind of go your way, as opposed to if you're watching a comedy with a group or in a theater, it's funnier in a group than it is alone. So like it's really weird how an experience, or even like we talked about this as well, binging something or watching it week to week. Those are two different viewing experiences that can alter the way you feel about a show or a particular episode. With binging, obviously, it's one after the other. With week to week, you have things to simmer, things to think about, and you can think about things you weren't thinking about before. Whereas to binging, you are just hitting play, next, and you don't really have time to think. You're just letting the show do all the thinking for you. You're not really, thinking about it outside of it until you stop watching it. But yeah, it's just really interesting just how experiences, all the different kinds of experiences can affect how you feel about a movie.
Absolutely.
I 100% agree. And while you were talking and describing that feeling, that when you really get into a TV show or into a movie and, who's with you, it makes the big difference, right? So you not only are not even, you're really invested to the point now you're emotionally invested. And that's why you push play to watch the next episode. You're like, oh my gosh, that was so good. And everything that's going on with those characters in the story, you emotionally invest yourself in them. Even if they are the bad, even if they're the villain, or even if they're the hero, you put yourself in those shoes, or you start making decisions. Well, if I was in that situation, I would have probably reacted the same way. And then you really start investing emotionally into those characters.
Yeah. And I think I saw this Instagram video like a little while ago that says like, oh, like if you just sit and watch TV with your spouse at the end of the night, like you're not really having a connection. I was like, I couldn't disagree with something somebody said more ever in my life.
I was like, what?
I was like, first of all, that's like the time we look forward to like every day, like because that's the time, that's like the little bit of time we get together, like away from everybody else, where we can kind of just relax, just the two of us. But then like watching these shows like ends up ends up creating conversation. Like you,
Absolutely.
because then we invest ourselves into the story, and then it's like, well, what do you think about this, and what do you think about that, and then like an hour later has passed by, and like we haven't watched anything, but like it creates so much conversation, and then we end up like, I don't know, you end up learning.
It's a bond.
Yeah,
with that person.
You're bonding through this medium together, but then also you're like learning things about the other person because you're seeing how they perceive things, and then like, you know, sometimes when she picks something out that I didn't see, and it's like, oh shit, like I didn't see that. Like, damn, you caught that? I didn't even catch that. Or like or vice versa. Like, and then it's cool because then you kind of get an insight into the other person's mind. I don't know. Like I just I think it's just a valuable thing. Like if you use it correctly.
Yeah. And there's also the opposite effect, and I'll tell you the story. I think I might have said this before, but I surprised Chris when I said that I'd never seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and he is like, "You got to watch it. It's hilarious." So we're hanging out. He puts it on. I think I was nodding off like most through the movie, and the jokes for me just wasn't landing. And then by the end of it, like it's all finished, and he looks over. He's like, "That was like the worst experience I've had watching this movie," because it's like, to him the movie was hilarious, and to me was like deadpan. I don't think I laughed once. The jokes never landed. And imagine if that was like Chris's first experience, then obviously he might have felt the same way because we both weren't reacting equally. And so, like, for me, I will always associate that watching that movie for the first time and be like, I just crushed Chris's dreams because he wanted me to laugh with him, and
He was so excited, and you're like,
and you just crushed his little heart.
Right. But then, again, the positive effect where you guys were saying is like you can connect that bond if you really, especially if it's worth engaging in conversation. So the experience can really truly affect everything. Also the time in which you watch it. So like probably for Chris, he was probably watching it in a different setting. Maybe he was younger and the jokes landed. And I talked about this a few months ago, maybe even a year ago at this point, that when we lost internet, and so we couldn't stream anything, but obviously I own a whole bunch of movies. And Megan and I settled on Ted, watching Ted again, because I remember really thinking that movie was funny, and we had a good time watching it. Watching it now, I was like, oh boy, what was I thinking 10 years ago? Because it is not hitting today. This movie's not as funny as I thought it was 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, I thought it was hilarious. So you just never know. But I think about it, it's like, if I watch this movie for the first time today, I think this movie, but I didn't because I watched it 10 years ago and it was hilarious. So
there's a couple of things that are like, there's quite a few things that are like that. Like you just, like you either couldn't make today or just wouldn't hit the same way. Like, do you think you could make American Pie the exact same way today?
Close. I think that one. I think that one still lands in some areas.
To us, it does, because that's something that we grew up with. But if you gave that to like a teenager today, they're gonna be like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
This is garbage.
Are you allowed to think that this is funny? They're like, or should I start listing out where the problems are?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But yeah, it's so fascinating to me. Like, or even when you're in the theater, when like I prefer the emptier the theater, the better, because I feel like that I get zero distractions when I'm watching a movie. But then, you know the people in there. You got they're talking, they're on their phones, they're just creating so many distractions, and you could miss something. And then all of a sudden you're just like, well, that just ruined the experience for me when I otherwise was already enjoying or not enjoying the movie. So I feel like it's such a weird thing, but it's one of the few things where the experience that you have when you first watch it or when you watch it later truly affects a lot of how you feel about either a character, a scene, the movie, the show. Yeah, this is really interesting.
Does it
a Scream?
Huh?
Remember the Scream movie? When Julian, you and I were watching Scream together.
Oh my gosh.
And so back to your point, Matt, that when it opens a bond between you and that other person. When you're watching something with somebody and they're truly invested, or they're seeing it for the first time, or you're both seeing it for the first time, they just get really invested. Sure. And then, so Julian, we finally allowed him to watch Scream. After Horror Nights, he wanted to watch all the Scream movies. So we I think it was the second one, or was it the first one?
It was the first one.
It was the first one. So him and I, all three of us are watching, and this is, going back to your point of people talking. So Julian and I just had this really in-depth conversation about one of the characters' decision and why they decided to do it.
Okay.
And we're sitting there having a full-blown conversation about why this person made that decision. And Ernesto's like, I can't watch anymore with you two.
You know how I am, Matt. It's like, are you guys going to stop talking? I was like, if you guys are going to keep talking, I'm going to go in the other room.
Yeah.
And then I paused the movie, and then I go, and then I was like, all right, are you guys done? And they're like, yeah. I was like, are you sure? This is your last chance. And then we're going to move on. And we can talk about it after the movie.
Hold on, questions and thoughts after, please.
It is a constant battle in my house. It's just.
Well, you're getting really excited talking about it, but I just pause it. Like, because Megan and I, especially in certain shows, to your point, like, we also have in-depth conversation about decisions and where we think it's going. And I can't talk over the movie. I need to pause it. Like, I have to. I have to pause it. Because I want, like, for me as well, especially if I'm watching for the first time, I don't have to. I don't want to miss anything. But also, if I've already seen it, I'm more a little loose about it, talking over it. But also, like, I don't want Megan to miss a part if she hadn't seen it. So there's also a cycle with that as well. But yeah, it's just really interesting how experiences affect even the mood that you're in. A mood of, like, if you're in a sad mood and you're watching a comedy and it's not landing for you and it's not cheering you up, that comedy's dead to you.
Yeah,
like
it's not funny.
It's not funny at all. Or if you're in a horror movie, if you're watching a horror movie, but like you just had like a good day, that movie just brought you down, and it's like, no, I'm not into this right now. It's not doing me any favors. So there's a lot of movies that I want to see, but for me, the mood is not right for me to watch that movie yet.
Yeah,
so
it has to be the right time.
Has to be the right time to watch it, or else I feel like I'm doing it a disservice, or not, at least not trying to give it my full attention. That's why after Halloween season, I don't watch horror movies. At least I don't try to, because like my mindset, I'm already out of it. I'm in Christmas mode. Give me lighter stuff right now, because I can't do the hard stuff. At least the horror stuff anyway.
Well, that's actually talking about Christmas stuff. That's the last thing I'm watching right now is the Santa Claus. So I'm going to tell you that I have my sleeping movies. And when I say sleeping movies, it is a movie that I put on. I literally will watch for 5 minutes. I will turn the volume all the way down to 1, and I will go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so the Santa Claus has been also the most recent that I've watched for 5 minutes. But I have seen the whole thing at least 50 plus times. And so that is one of my sleeping movies is the Santa Claus. And then also the funny story I wanted to tell you was, so Knocked Up was also one of my sleeping movies. And a funny story with the Knocked Up. So when I was in college, we used to go stand outside of Best Buy, and for Black Friday, we would go eat dinner with everybody and spend time with the family for Thanksgiving. And this is before Black Friday blew up online. So this is when you had to go to the store to get your doorbuster items. So we would go to Best Buy at like 6 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day at night. And we would go set up our tent and our sleeping bags and our chairs. And we would be like one of the first 5 people in line. And then as the night went on, more and more people started showing up. And the line was all the way around the building and around the block. Like, that's how long the line was at Best Buy. It was the most popular store in the area of where we lived. And that's where everybody showed up for. So going back to Knocked Up. So what we would do, we would literally get in line, but we wouldn't buy anything. The experience of standing outside all night was enough to make that the best time of our life. So, and I mean, no, but we would, I mean, we were in college, you think, and there was people there that would drink and like hide it or whatever. we would be drinking hot chocolate and having the best time of our life. And so we would sit out there, and then this is what happened when you got closer to doorbuster time. So there would be people that would be probably like 20 down the line. They would come up to the front, and they had their magazine, because remember they used to mail you the ad. And so they would come up to you, and they would say, "Oh, what are you here for?" Because what they would do is they were like, "Okay, so there's a limit of 12 in the store. Am I the 12th person? You know, like, where am I in that line?" So then what they did was they would get to us, and we were not there to buy anything. We were poor college students. So we were there just for the fun. And so we would make up things that we were there for. So, for example, they would come up to us, and they were like, "Oh, what are y'all here for?" And we would all look at each other. We were like, "We're here for the lawnmower." Like, we would just make up the most outrageous things, and they're like, "Oh, good. Okay, so this person's not getting a TV." So, but every time somebody would come ask us, we would come up, we were like, "Oh, we're here for the vacuum cleaner. Oh, we're here for the dishwasher." And people would, "Oh, okay." That's probably so terrible, but we were being college students. So then, this is the funniest thing about Knocked Up. When that movie came out, we were out there, we were all in line, and it was a doorbuster item. And I actually wanted to get it. I wanted to get it. We were there to get it. And it was so funny because we had there was like 25 people that must have asked us what we were there for. And they were like, "Hey, what are you here for?" And we would be like, "We're here to get knocked up."
What?
They were like, you know the movie?
Yeah, it's a doorbuster deal. It's right here.
It's right here.
It says,
but
"Get
they
knocked
didn't
up."
look at that. They bypassed that because they're not they're looking at TVs, but they're like, "You're here to get what?"
I'm sorry?
Get knocked up.
Also, you can look at it another way and be like, wait, you're here at 6 at night to get a movie? Like, you sure you don't want a TV? You're in a prime spot for a TV. Like, no, just the movie.
Movie's fine.
Really just want the movie.
But
Oh, that's hilarious.
so, one of my sleeping movies.
I think that's all we got for What You Watching, Matt. Because I have what she has.
Got it. Fair enough. So talking about a mood, I was in an action movie mood. I feel like I haven't seen one of those in a minute. So the first thing I started watching was Heart of Stone, starring Gal Gadot, and it got like mixed reviews on it. And I will have to say that I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. I turned it on expecting it to be your average action picture, and it really, in a way it was, but I was also having a really good time with it. This is like, it's weird for me to say this, and I feel like I don't mean what I say, but in the context of this year alone, it was a better Mission Impossible than Mission Impossible was.
Wow. How long is it? Is it also 2.5 hours?
No, it's like a solid 2 hours. I just felt like I had a better time watching her Secret Spy mission than I did with Dead Reckoning Part 1. Maybe because I had more expectations with that, and like they kind of built it up in the previous films, but like I had zero expectations. I actually had lower expectations watching this one, and I was like, you know what? In all intents and purposes, this was pretty decent. Like, they had a couple twists and turns. The story made sense. Like, the villain was all right. She actually, and I'm not a big fan of Gal Gadot. I think, honestly, one of her only good roles is Wonder Woman. After that, I don't really care for her in any other movie. This one, she owned it. And they had, like, this really intense action scene, like, with a blimp. And I was like, oh, my God, this is Netflix. How you doing? This is pretty good.
Look at you.
Like, look at you. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, this is solid. So I was like, you know what? I got, like, this is pretty solid. I'm gonna go for another one. And then I started the Extraction Part 2, the one with Chris Hemsworth. And Ernesto, did you get a chance to watch this? I know we reviewed it like a couple years ago.
We reviewed the first one, but no, I never saw the second one.
To my surprise, again, this is way better than the first movie.
Really?
Like,
okay.
Like, way better. And like, I remember we thought it was decent, and we kind of gave it praise for
the cinematography.
The fight.
I know I really like the cinematography.
And this one did not disappoint. I was like, man, we were sleeping on some hits. over the summer. I mean, the summer was pretty crazy. Like we had a lot of movies that we caught this summer, and this one, I think Hannah Stone came out in August. This one I read was it June? Yeah. So I like this. It was just in the mix, and I was pleasantly surprised at how much like this movie really works in the sequel. And I was like, wow, it picked up right where the first one left off a couple months later. And
did you rewatch the first one?
I watched a recap.
Oh, okay.
I don't got time for this. Like it got over the same beats, and honestly, you don't really need it. Like it doesn't really go over anything from the first movie at all. You just know that he got hurt. That's pretty much because at the end of the first movie, he's either dead or not dead. You don't know. Oh, yeah. In like he's in the lake or the river or whatever, and that's how the movie ends. But this one, it picks up right after that. Obviously, just the fact that there's a sequel, you know he's alive. Yeah. And they had, honestly, one of the best action scenes I've seen all year, and it surpasses what Mission Impossible tried to do. And I think, like, if Hand of Stone was more like an adjacent to Mission Impossible, then Extraction is like an adjacent to John Wick. And like the action's just off the walls, crazy. And they remember the really long, intense one shot they did in the first movie. Yeah, they did it again. 22 minutes, and it starts with him breaking somebody out of jail, then getting out of the prison, then a car chase to a train, and then the train is on the move, and they're like going in between like train carts, and then there's a helicopter involved on this train thing, and I was like, what is happening right now? And like we're doing this all in one shot. Yeah. Like you can tell where they could have like placed a cut and whatever, but like just I was in my living room alone. I clapped after it was over. I was like, good for you. Well done. Like no one's here to listen, but like at least someone's got to know that I'm clapping for that, because by the time it was over and they finally made a cut, I was like, because I'm literally staring at the screen like they got to cut now, right? No, okay, we're still going. They got it now. No, they're still going. I was glued to the TV for the entire 22 minutes. Wow. I was, and then like the story continued, and it was solid. And then they also had some great action that came after it as well, like on a rooftop. I was like, this franchise has legs, man. And also like Chris Hemsworth just nailed it. Like he did one hell of a performance there, just being an action star. Like I think I recommend watching both, but if you're watching one or the other, watch Extraction 2. It's like they took what was great about the first movie and then they just elevated in the second one.
I can't. Wait, this one's definitely going to be added to my list then.
Yeah, I definitely give it a watch. Watch it. And then the last thing I was watching, Ernesto, I told you I was on a binge. It's been a busy 5 days because the last time we recorded, I've watched not just one, not just two, I've watched 3 seasons worth of Barry.
Oh! But I think you finished it then. You finished the whole series then, huh? Or you got one more?
There's 4. One more season.
Oh, yeah. Man. Season 4 is so good.
So good.
All right, so let me hear it.
Yeah, so the first, obviously, I felt like the first 2 seasons. Now, this is what I was talking about, like being in a mood and being like the experience. I feel like a lot of this is just me just going, like hitting next. I feel like a lot of what's happening is blurring together. And I feel like it's a negative and a positive, because there are like things that they've brought back in later seasons that's like, oh, I know exactly what that's from because I literally just saw it yesterday. Whereas other people, it would be like, I think I was looking at it and it was like, first season was in 2018, second season was in 2019. Then because of the pandemic, there was a 3-year break. So the third season didn't come until 2022. And then the final season came this year in 2023. So like there was a gap. Yeah. Either within a year or 3 years at the most. So like I can see like either some people might have forgotten at this point certain aspects of it, but like for me, I'm just hitting next. Like I gotta wait for nothing except for my own time. But like I think right now the first 2 seasons felt very different from the third season, and I felt the third season was very dark, where I feel like the first two seasons really did a good job of balancing the comedy and like the drama and like how like the seriousness this series can be. And I feel like lately we just been slowly getting darker and darker, as especially in season 3, which I just finished. I started it yesterday and I finished it already. And it like it was just Bill Hader as Barry just going mad like after in season 3. And so yeah, so far I'm enjoying it. I feel like I'm not 100% loving it, but I feel like I'm not giving myself any time to love it because I'm just going one after the next. So like I'm invested, but I'm not loving it. I feel like it's the same way where I felt with Game of Thrones, where I watched all of it in one continuous session. So like I'm not giving myself any room to be like to think about it, and it's just like I feel like I don't have to because the next episode's right there. What I do miss, though, was that the first 2 seasons offered a behind-the-scenes look, like inside the episode, where I thought it gave me great insight with Bill Hader and the other person, Alec Block, I think, where they gave you like a 2-minute summary of what the inside of the episode was. And then for some reason, season 3, they didn't do that. I feel like I was missing
I believe it's there for the 4th season. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I think so, though.
I hope it is because I love that part about I love that part about HBO where they give you the behind the scenes look at certain parts of the episode where like some things you weren't thinking about or some things that the creators decided to do that you didn't notice. Yeah, so I was a little disappointed with season 3. I feel like I got to be left to my own devices and create my own like I have to notice it more in that sense. But yeah, season 3 much darker.
Season 4 is just as dark.
It's pretty dark.
It's dark. It's funny. It's very much dark comedy, and it just kind of gets darker from where you're at. You just kind of continue down.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is. I knew because right now at the end of season 3 he went to jail, and I feel like that's honestly the only thing I knew about the show because I saw the poster for season 4 so many times because a lot of people were hyping up the final season, and so for me it looked like a jail cell. So I had a theory that eventually he was gonna go to jail, and that's where season 3 left off. But there were just a lot of like moments I was not expecting. There was a moment in season 2 where it felt very similar to like for those who watch Breaking Bad, there was the Fly episode, and I feel like Barry had its own version of that where like he went to go kill that guy who was cheating on, or like the detective's wife left him for somebody else who happened to be a Taekwondo like Olympian, and the whole episode was just like them beating up each other, and then his daughter came in the mix, and she was like, he's like. She was like, she's not normal. And then it was so funny because like Fuchs trying to get her in the car, and he's like, come on, little girl. And then she just like growls at him, runs up a tree up into the roof, and then he slowly walks back to the car, and he's like, she's not human. Like, it's just, like I think it works really well balancing between comedy and drama, and there's like really getting into the mindset of like where Barry is. And I feel like season 3 is just unhinged Barry. Like whatever happened like at the end of season 2 that has broken him, like even to the point where Henry Winkler as Kusanov, I mean Henry Winkler has been delivering top notch
he's so
from
good.
day one. He is really good, and like where season 3 took him, I think for me that was the strongest season for him because of the change that he's had. And then especially how it ended that season as well. And then honestly, the one character that I never cared for is his girlfriend Sally. I did not like her from day one. I don't root for her success, and it's just like I don't know. I just feel like she was just never a good person. But and especially like when like she at the end of season 2 where she like they were practicing the line and the rehearsal, and then she just went off book and did something else. And even though that's what got her to fame, it went against what she was trying to do. And I understand it, like, as far as a storyteller's perspective. I just didn't like it for her character. I was like, come on, you can do better than that.
Or when she blows up on Darcy Darden in the elevator.
Oh my
that
God.
was awful. That was
Yeah,
awful.
And then what followed after that as well. But yeah, there was one scene that kind of hit me in a way I wasn't expecting, and that was when she was working on her show, and the fake streaming service, I think it was called Banshee. Like, they had a 98% of Rotten Tomatoes, and they were excited day one. It was on the launch page, and they took it off, and they had the meeting with the streaming people, and she said that they canceled it because the algorithm said that it wasn't, like, hitting the numbers that they wanted to. And it's like, it's only been up for 12 hours. What about word of mouth? It's like, oh, the algorithm already counted for that. And for me, that is so relevant. Yes. And there was a line that really, really hit me, where I never, I know we talk about it in the news all the time, shows getting canceled and whatever. But I never thought of it that way until she said the line, what was the point of going over the shots? Like, what was the point of reviewing the dailies and making sure we had everything if you were just going to cancel it anyway? And for me, that really hit, because, like, yeah, what is the point of all of it? What's the point of all that work if within the month, if it didn't hit the numbers, you're just canceling the show? You're like 3 years worth of work for people to, like, didn't have even get a chance to see it yet. And I can only imagine, like, the heartbreak and the devastation that creators have, that you put all this energy into it only for the streaming service to be like, well, it didn't hit the numbers in the first 60 days, so we just got to cut it. No more for you. It, like, to me, it didn't really, like, we talk about it, but it didn't really hit in a way until they showed it on screen like that. And I was like, wow, they have a really good point, like, especially for all creators out there. So yeah, there's a lot I'm liking about the show. I'm really curious how it ends. I got one season to go. I mean, Ernesto, I've been flying.
I can tell.
These. Like,
I
was
mean,
like
3 seasons
I was
in
like,
just a few days. Well, they're short, and they're short episodes.
Yeah,
they are. It's only like
30 to 45,
20.
Have you seen any of the episodes directed by Bill Hader?
Oh, there's a whole bunch of them.
I think, if I remember, I'm pretty sure he directs all of the last season. I find myself really liking the episodes that he directed.
Yeah, I mean, he directed the pilot. I see his name. It's either him or his co-creator as a director. There's every now and then you see another name I'm not familiar with, but for the most part, he's been covering this entire time. And also, just good for him as a creator to build up a show like this and have him be the lead. And I feel like part of Sally is Bill Hader in a way, because he's directing, he's writing, he's producing, he's starring. Like, a lot of work is on him, where I feel like the Sally character is in some ways embodying what all the workload that he has, especially in the 3rd season, as Barry himself is, like, going insane.
I want to point out something, but I think you really hit it on the head about TV shows that were, I don't know if the right word is hiatus, but they, where they were on pause during COVID. When they started those shows back up, when, filming started producing started happening, I think that they would have to really hit it off strong, because it's like folks like us. I mean, we're we have full-time jobs, we have, kids, we don't have the time to go back and watch season 1, 2, and 3 again to now pick up on 4, where it's now streaming. So I think you really hit it in the head to say, once these shows started coming back and started posting, a lot of people, or a lot of audience, I would assume, are picking up right where they left off. And that's where they have to really recap strong, and maybe even think about rewriting some of the first couple of episodes, because a lot of the vast audience is going to pick up where you post, and that's where it has to really capture. Like, when we started season 4 of Barry, it took me a long time to realize, that's right. Yeah. It took me at least until probably the 2nd or 3rd episode where I was actually caught up and understanding where we left off. And I think that really took a lot back on me and how I felt about the show, because now I was like, I just spent the first 3 episodes trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Doing a mental recap.
Yeah, and that is yeah, and that's why, it's rough, because these shows, like, especially for streaming, the old formula for television was you're getting these throughout the season. So like they're 22 episodes. You watch them week after week. In the fall, you get your small break, and then it comes back after the holidays, and you get a small break in the winter, or I'm sorry, in the spring. Then they cap it off in May. You get the summer off, and you come back in the fall. That's traditional television. Now it's like we're gonna give you, like, especially for Netflix, we're giving you all 8 to 10 episodes right now, and you're not gonna get it again until next year. So you spend, your 4 to 8 hours watching the show and you binge it, and then after that, you just forget about it.
Yes.
And then you wait a whole nother year. It's like, oh, I like that show and I want to watch it again. And you're like, oh, but what happened?
I know.
And like out of 365 days out of the year, say if it came back on exactly the same day in the calendar year, you only invested 8 hours of time out of the whole 365 days. So yeah, it's understandable if you don't remember every detail that happened, which is a benefit to binging because, like, especially in the 3rd season, they brought back a lot of characters associated to the murders that he committed throughout the first 2 seasons. And it's like, okay, I know them because I literally just watched them like 2 days ago. But I can also see myself comparing myself to other shows, whereas like I would not have remembered that Ryan was the first guy that he killed in the first episode. Would not have remembered that at all. Actually, he did not. Actually, he didn't do that murder. It was the Chechens who did that. But Hank, he's hilarious.
Isn't he great? I love Hank.
Hank is fantastic. But like he also took a dark, like they pushed him to the edge in this 3rd season. So I'm curious to see where they go with him, and also just all the characters at this point. Like, how do you wrap this up? Because he's in jail now. So
it sticks the landing.
Where do we go?
All I'll tell you is that the movie definitely sticks the landing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's
I'm
good
sorry,
to know.
the series. You know what I meant. The
Yeah.
The show.
series sticks the landing in the end.
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Probably after work tonight, I'm probably gonna finish it before Megan gets home.
You'll be up till 5 a.m. With your eyes
eyes wide open.
Bloodshot.
It's like I finished it.
I finished
Megan's
it.
like, "What's wrong with you?" I finished all of Barry. I finished 4 seasons.
And you do Barry's voice.
She's like, "What is that voice you're doing?" Start just yelling. She's like, "You need a nap."
You need a nap. But the other show that when you were talking about taking a long break and trying to pick back up where you left off, another show that came to mind for us was The Handmaid's Tale. That one, we still haven't finished it because it took so long, and not to the show's anybody's fault, but it took so long to get the new season, and I think it was only the first half of the season that they dropped.
And it's so dark.
And it took a huge turn. I mean, we were solely invested. I mean, we got the book, we watched, I mean, we would religiously watch the show every night. That was just as soon as the kids were in bed, we were like, okay, Handmaid's Tale.
Let's finish,
It was, but now it's just, with the break and with where it take a turn, I mean, I'm falling off the wagon.
Like, I had, like it's there, but I have no, like, immediate desire to go finish it. I just feel like it's just kind of, like, off the rails. Like, it seems like it's going off the rails.
It's interesting, like how much. As for me, I relate to The Walking Dead of how much investment I had with that show, and I was like, "This is my ride or die."
Too.
And just like that, I was like, "I don't care anymore." Like it was just a quick shift. It's like, you know what? 7 seasons. I've invested a lot into this already. I'm good. I have no desire to finish out the rest of the 4 seasons that followed after this, or 5 that followed after that. And I feel like it's too far out of reach for me to care anymore. Maybe if it was 1 or 2 more seasons, I might maybe be interested. But I think it was like the premiere of season 7, like right when Negan got there and he made his final kills, and after that, like Megan said, I'm done watching. Like she was done after that episode, and I was like, oh, you're done? Like you mean all that time that we invested? You're done with the show? Okay, I'm gonna watch it then, and I never did.
You know what? That's exactly where we fell off.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people also fell off in that season. I wonder how many audience they lost with that.
They did all that. That's because they did
unnecessary
all that bullshit with Glenn, and then like
that whole thing with Glenn.
It
just really broke my heart. Honestly,
the thing that really got me was the fake death. When he had to, then he went on TV to say that he was going to come back because so
Right,
many people were
yes.
upset, and then to not only then just kill him like a few episodes later.
But not only that, they made a big deal about like who was Negan going to kill, and they used it. It was supposed to be a season 6 finale, but they decided to use it as a season 7 premiere. So they took the whole break for the audience to be like, well, who is he going to kill? And then I feel like once we got that answer, and the way they did it too, was like, okay,
Yeah,
we're done here.
It was
All that for that.
It was
Yeah.
really dissatisfying.
Right.
I could right then and there when Glenn died, and then we watched the rest of that we fell off. I mean, it just.
Yeah, I think Glenn took half the
Yeah.
audience
Yeah.
with him.
Yes.
Like,
I
seriously.
think if they had not done, if they didn't do the fake kill, if they didn't do any promotion for who Negan was gonna kill, and then just let it happen, the show would have been way
Right.
more successful.
I
And done
agree
it
with
and
that
not
statement.
stretched it to the season opener. If they had left it in the finale as the end of the
Sure.
finale, because then it's like, well,
Yeah,
holy,
as it should
it's
have.
like, well, fuck, well, who's like, what are they gonna do now? Like, then it would have been that instead of this, like, are they really gonna do this bullshit to us? And they did it, and then not only to just kill Glenn again.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying Barry, like I said, but I also says, like I said, I don't think I'm giving my time to like really sink my teeth into it, because I'm just like clicking the next one, like next. So it comes with its ups and downs on that, but I'm enjoying the ride. I think there's a lot of funny moments in it. There's a few moments that made me laugh. Some of dark, especially how with him and the detective. And like, I feel like that's when I was like, okay, this show is doing some stuff when it comes to like how serious it can be. Like, it was playing with that line a little bit, and then we've gone off from there. But yeah, so by next episode, I'll probably be talking about the finale with you.
Okay.
And how it all ended. But anyway, that's all I've been watching. So with that, we're going to be diving into our spoiler review of The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I know you two have read the books, you've listened, Ernesto twice. I haven't listened to anything. So, so with that, Hannah, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the film?
You know what? I loved it. If you had taken that, okay, so I didn't finish the book yet. I have about 3 hours left of the book. We do Audible, because it's, with our hour drive to and from work, that's the perfect time to just
Absolutely.
put on your, and listen into the car of the whole story. And then you catch yourself like this driving, you're like, but I haven't read the majority of the book, and after watching the movie with you guys, I loved it. Ultimately, I have a lot of notes of pieces they left out of the movie that was in the book that I wish they would have had in the movie. But even with the missing pieces, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie.
Yeah. Do you want to go into your other stuff now, or I guess you want us to go around first, and then you want to go into yours? Okay. I overall really enjoyed it. There are, I had to stop myself because I felt like there were parts of the movie where I like, well, that doesn't happen like that. And I felt like comparing a lot of book versus movie. I had to like stop myself from doing that because comparison is a thief of joy.
Right.
There are some key points of the book that they took out that like I felt like they still should have been there, but I think overall it was a great film considering what they had to pack into those 2.5 hours. I think the guy Tom Blythe who played Coriolanus, I thought he did a really great job. I liked Jason Schwartzman as a Lucky Flickerman. He comes off as a young Stanley Tucci. I think that played off. I think he played to that character really, really well. I liked Rachel Zegler as Lucy Baird. In the book, she doesn't come off across as like a country, as they give her in the movie.
Yeah.
So it didn't bother me. It was just something that I was like, well, that's different. Like I just wasn't expecting that. I think who really nailed it is Viola Davis as Professor Gall.
Yes.
I think how Professor Gall comes across as the book, I think Viola Davis encapsulates that very, very well. And I think the same can be said for Peter Dinklage as Casca Highbottom. as the dean of the school. My only main gripe is that the book is written in third person, but you in the book you're in Coriolanus's head. Like
Yes.
you're in his head, like you
Yes.
hear his thoughts, and almost like I would compare it to like You on Netflix, where like you're hearing Joe's inner monologue. Like the book is kind of like that. And I think that's a key part of the book that I think really that's the one piece that I would have loved to have that incorporated. But I think in doing that, they would have had to give, this really should have been 2 movies. It's really kind of what they packed a lot.
They did.
They tried to pack a lot into this movie. So we got a streamlined version of the book. So I think in that case, for what they tried to pack into here, I think the movie was great. The Hunger Games sequence was really good. The action sequences were great. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. For it to be 2.5 hours, like the movie kind of just flew by. Like I was like, oh yeah, like damn, like we got like 45 minutes left. Like we are blowing through this story right now.
Yeah, I feel like so obviously I never read the books and I've only watched the movies, and I was telling maybe Hannah before when we had dinner after the movie. And oh, by the way, happy belated birthday! Just putting that out there.
Thank you.
And also, we got to see the movie together.
We did get.
Yes, we did.
Yes, it's one of those rare occasions where we were all in the same theater. I think that's only ever happened
a handful of times. Like 4 or 5 times. Yeah.
But I feel like I'm not as invested into the Hunger Games story, and it's been a while since I've seen the first 4 movies. And I was telling Hannah that I watched like a 10-minute recap before I met up with you guys to watch the movie, just to get the idea of like what happened in it. I know this is a prequel and it's not really that important, but I'm just curious. I just want to remember what happened in the first 4 movies. And after it was like a 10 to 12-minute recap, and after it was over, I was like, really? That's what happened? Like, it's been so long since I've seen those movies. I completely forgot about half the story that's there. And so going into this, I felt like it was like a welcome return to the world of Pan Am. Like, I thought it was like they really did a great job of like just going back into that world. It helped that Francis Lawrence, who was the director of Catching Fire, Mockingjay 1 and 2, came back to direct this one. Like he got that essence that he was able to build within those 3 movies and brought it into here. Obviously, like I think it was 64 years later, before the events of Hunger Games, the first movie. And there were a few things I was confused about, but I think the driving force was like the powerhouse of performances that was in this movie. Like I thought everyone just brought it. Like I was invested into their characters. Because they were doing such a good job. And to your point, Viola Davis, I've never seen her like that before. And she was like menacing. I was like, oh my God, you're scary.
I think also something should be said about the production and costume design. Like like really well done. I mean, the whole when they're in that like arena setting, the arena itself, and also where they had the mentors at. It's a little bit different in the book where how they communicate and how they were able to send them stuff. But I think it looked futuristic. It was like, but it was also very retro. So I think it worked for like what they tried to do, for what they were trying to get across.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I feel like Rachel Zegler, for me, this was the performance that makes me understand why the studios were all after her after West Side Story. I don't think for me, it wasn't West Side Story because I never got that feeling.
100% agree. 100% agree.
This movie, she really shined in this movie. I think they utilized her ability to sing to its full effect. I know obviously West Side Story, like it's a musical, and so she was singing all over the place, but this one really utilized how great her voice is and how she's able to carry a scene well more than any other movie I've seen her in so far. I just thought it worked well. I was not expecting the accent. Like, I guess I wasn't paying attention to the trailer that much. I'm like, oh, okay, there's a southern accent. Like, you're going for it. It worked really well, and I believed her every motivations. I felt that she cared for Snow. I felt like she cared for her people. Like, I was along her journey this entire time. I think she really did a great job. And then, what was his name? Tom Blythe? Yeah. He also, like, I looked up his credits. He hasn't done much before this. So I feel like this is like one of probably his biggest project he's done so far. And he nailed it as the lead. Like, he was as good as like toward the beginning where you were like, he cares for people. And you can feel that, and especially like his love toward Lucy. But then you can see his descent to madness and becoming the villain, so to speak. And like I felt that with him as well. The only gripe that I really have about the movie was that, to your point, it definitely was like streamlined. Like, we got a streamlined version. I just felt like that we just got, even though it was 2.5 hours, I do agree with you in some intents and purposes. This should have been 2 parts because I feel like we just got to certain scenes very quickly, and like his turn from good to evil was really quick for me.
Yes.
Like, I feel like we didn't have enough time to simmer with that. Like, it just happened. I was like, oh, okay. I guess this was inevitable because you are the villain in the Hunger Games. So I know you have to turn evil at some point, but to me it was just like a light switch, and
it was like a light switch.
I think in the book, they definitely let you simmer on it, but they do it in a way to where they show you that, oh, he's just always been that way. Mm-hmm. It's just like, this is the thing that lets everybody else know, and kind of like what revealing him, that version of himself to himself. It was the whole action and build up in the end of Lucy Gray finding out that he was responsible for Sejanus's death. Mm-hmm. And in like, him, the whole that's a really big part in the book is the ending, is that whole scene where they're walking and she questions him, and it's very similar. And the thing the way it plays out in the book is better. They show Lucy Gray as a little bit more subtle, as like, where I felt like in the movie, like, she was like very aggressive, very like in his face, like, who's the third person? Whereas in the book, like, he says it, and he realizes he's in the process of questioning, and he asks her a question about the walking stick. Well, she doesn't immediately question him about it. She answers his question to like break his guard down, and then she asks him. So to me, I felt like in the book it's better because it shows how sly Lucy Gray is, whereas in the movie they just made her more like she was just more abrasive, like just more like in his face, whereas like the book really plays to how cunning she is, and why she was the victor, and why she was a survivor. Like, and so, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say also to piggyback off that, in the movie, you spent a lot, and actually, in my opinion, a little bit more time with Lucy. So, than in the book, because in the book, as you know, you were mentioning third person, but you really feel like you're in Corey Landis's head, and they're in the whole entire book. Mm-hmm. And you spent a lot of time with his emotions and things he was going through, and how he was feeling, and how he was reacting to every play-by-play that was going on in the Hunger Games. But in the movie, in the book, you didn't go down in the tunnels. No, really. You got to know that she was hiding somewhere in a tunnel, but the whole scene with Jessup and Lucy in the tunnel, and the thing, and her taking care of him, it kind of reminded me of Katniss and Peeta. Mm-hmm. When Katniss was taking care of Peeta and they were hiding, that made me think of that. But that whole scene down in the tunnel, and then her helping him, you didn't get that in the book. You were really with Corey Landis and how he was feeling about, is she okay? I need to thought like she needs to come out. He was really obsessed in the book of her well-being, and her being safe, and her getting out of there, and him helping her. That's all he thought about. And I felt like I didn't feel that in the movie, that his investment and that's just my opinion, the investment that he had in the book and their relationship, I didn't feel it as much in the movie.
Yes. I felt like that he always had an alternative motive. I do believe that he felt like he fell in love with Lucy, but I always felt like in the back of my mind that there was like a backup plan, or like there was like he always was thinking of himself first and not about the relationship that he had with Lucy. And so to your point, yeah, I didn't quite feel that he was fully invested into making sure that she was protected, as well as making sure that his self-interest was also at play at all times.
Whereas in the book, it's very subtle, but they make it's very strong that he loves her. Like very much. I mean, he talks about like how he talks about how her kisses make him feel, and like the feeling he gets when he's with her. But then you get this time with him in the end, where after everything happens, where he realizes that it wasn't like that he doesn't like love. Like he doesn't that if he was going to marry again, like he would never fall in love. It's almost like he was him being scorned by Lucy Gray, her trying to kill him, even though it was just her figuring out like what he was going to do and everything, that her figuring out him before he was able to figure out himself. Like he I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. I hate it when that happens. No, but he oh my god, I forgot what I was saying. I forgot where I was going with that.
But it's back to what we're talking about in the movie. Like Matt said, you get that feeling that it's like he cares about her.
Oh yes.
But the alternative motive is like he was already feeling power, and like he even said it in the movie, and it also is in the book too. That first kill, it changed him. Yeah. In the book, it was the same way. It was like
he thought about it.
About it all the time. In the book, he was obsessed with it. He kept thinking about it. He finally told Tigress and not Grandmam, but he didn't tell Grandmam. He told Tigress.
He told Tigress.
He told Tigress in the book that he had killed. Yeah. It was Bobby, right? Bobbin. And so that. But I think also in the book, Tigress he was very close with her in the book. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel that in the movie. She was there and yeah, she comforted him or got him ready and all that. And she was like, "You look great." But in the book, they had a very close relationship, like a sister and brother.
That was like, I mean, in the book, it almost comes across, unless they had to tell you otherwise. Otherwise, your assumption is that they're brother and sister. And then I guess what I did like in the movie is that you didn't, obviously, just for we didn't get any of that time of them in the time of the war, like how the movie opens. Like that's not in the book at all. But that was I think that was a nice addition, was getting to see that.
Honestly, I didn't realize that they weren't brother and sister until so this morning I just saw like someone explain the ending, get a different perspective on their thoughts on it, and like maybe something I might have missed since I wasn't the one reading the book. And they said they were cousins. I was like, what? Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're cousins?
They mention it. Yeah. They mention it. It's like a throwaway line in the movie of that they're cousins.
Oh, like
it was in the beginning. She was like, "Oh, that's why you're my favorite cousin." Yeah. And it was like very quick. Yeah.
I probably just missed it, and I just because the beginning of the movie made it seem like that they were siblings, like they were brother and sister, because they were both hiding together. And then they, like you said, your father died, and say your father and your uncle died. So like it to me, I just like already put that in my head that they were brother and sister, and I just probably ignored everything, all the other signs that would tell me otherwise. But speaking of family, I thought Peter Dinklage's character and like the dynamic that he had with the games and like his relationship with Snow's father, like to me, I thought that was a twist that I guess I didn't see coming. Like he was actually the Snape in this scenario. He was looking out for the well-being of the people rather than making these games go forward. And in theory, he was guilty for his actions, or he allowed this to happen, the games to even start. Even though he didn't inadvertently do it, he did write the paper, and then Father Snow, I forgot his name, stole the paper, gave it to Dr. Gall, and they kind of ran with it. So he's felt this guilt this entire time, and it's kind of like a bittersweet ending for him at his demise at the end of the movie. Like, and in some cases, he was trying to save the districts from no longer participating in the games, and Snow was continuing his father's legacy of like, we're gonna not only make these games mandatory, we're gonna make it popular, and people are gonna want to see them every year.
How do you perceive his death? How do you perceive Peter Dinklage's death at the end of the movie? Like, what do you perceive happening?
What do you mean?
Like, how did he die?
He was poisoned.
Okay. Who do you? So your assumption is that Coriolanus poisoned him?
Yeah, with most likely rat poison because he did. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's literally what happens in the book, because it's not. They directly tell you in the book. They tell you that he poisoned, and how hard it was for him to poison the morphling. But they didn't do any of that. Like in the movie, they just show you him knock back this bottle, and then
right.
But I guess
your assumption is.
But I guess based off what happened with Lucy Gray, your assumption is that he did kill him on purpose.
Yeah, I assume that because he was like his descent to madness at this point. He was the villain at that point. It was the very end of the movie. Yeah, I didn't think anything otherwise, that he was definitely poisoned, especially with the blood coming down, because that's what happened to the poor little girl in the games, where when Lucy poisoned the bottle, there was blood coming down her nose, and that was the same thing that happened with Peter Dinklage's character. So I just put 2 and 2 together on that one.
Okay.
I did think that the games itself was longer than I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be quick, so they spent a lot of time on the game, which I didn't mind, especially for a 2.5-hour movie. I thought the game was pretty well orchestrated, considering that the arena was so small compared to the first 4 movies, where the arenas felt so massive.
Yeah, this massive
and
forest.
This one felt very tiny. But also within the game, it felt like they can do whatever the hell they wanted. Like the Dr. Gall just drops a whole bunch of snakes. Like, you guys are all dead now. I was like, aren't there rules or something? I guess not. Okay, it's fine. Like, that part I had a little bit of a issue with. And then she was more than happy to just let Lucy die at that moment. What I do appreciate is that I feel like in some cases they didn't draw on the fact that Snow cheated. Like, they addressed that immediately.
Yes.
Like, as soon as the game was over, it was like, cheated, you're out of here. Like, I'm glad
and that's pretty much what happens. Like, that's how part 2 ends, is where he goes to Dean Highbottom's office, and he lays out.
Dr. Gall was there.
Yeah, and Dr. Gall in the book.
Dr. Gall was
both
there.
of them in the book. Both of them are in the room, and that's where part 2 ends. Mm-hmm. It's like they go there, and then they lay out the compact, the napkin, and I think I feel like there was 2, because one of it, I think it was him feeding her or something. There was 3 in the book. There's 3 items.
There was 3 items in the book.
In the movie, there was only 2. But yeah, it's the same thing that's the same thing that happens. What I would have loved to have seen if they split it into 2 movies is if the first movie was part 1 and part 2, and the last movie would be part 3 and what's in the book, it's considered the epilogue, but in the movie they just kind of merge it with part 3, because something they didn't go over in the movie, which I kind of wish they did, they kind of briefly touched on it, about the students not being the mentors anymore. Like, they didn't mention, and I don't remember if she said it, but this was the birth of, and it was Coriolanus's idea to start the Victor Village, and like the Victor gives the district a part. They get district food for the district. Like, these are really important things that sets the stage for for everything he does later on in the games. So that's just like I kind of what I wish for. And you want to go over your stuff?
Yes. And I think that actually is a segue to something I wanted to talk about, was when Dr. Gall asked him, and this happened in the book too, multiple times, she asked Coriolanus, what do you think about the Hunger Games? Or what does the Hunger Games mean to you?
Yeah.
And that is, it resonates, because when she asked him in the beginning, he thought of it as, he had a different point of view. But then when she asked him in the end, that's when she knew that he was ready.
Yeah.
He finally got it.
That he finally was where she wanted him to be.
Yeah. Did I write down? Yeah, he said the games were created to remind them who they are, and then the victors, is what his response in the end of the movie is what he said. So, like, he was like, the games are to remind them that we are the victors of the war that happened. And that was the line that was apparently, I was watching a video that was explaining some differences within the book, and apparently he said something different in the book. But more or less that was the same context of
Yeah, it was the same.
Yeah.
It was not word for word the same, but it was close.
Mm-hmm.
But there were certain scenes that it's like, well, that's like a direct line.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of them were like a direct line for the book. Like the whole her questioning him, like that scene is almost the same. Like how they spoke to each other.
In the classroom. Are you talking about when she was talking to him, like the first time when he was in there with all the mentors in Dean Highbottom's class, and she walked in and he started talking about his ideas to do in the games to send to send everybody, water, food to the tributes. And then at that point, she was like, "Oh, that's a great idea. You should write that. You have an assignment for me tomorrow."
Right.
Yeah.
And now to hear that technically, like Highbottom, like she kind of took Highbottom's ideas to even start the Hunger Games, and in a way, that's how Snow gained to power. It was a very similar way. That's like she just takes ideas from other people and then creates them, and then it's a whole thing. So exactly what is she really doing? Except for
that's the thing. Yeah, she's just organizing,
Mm-hmm.
just connecting. She's just connecting the dots. But she did the same thing with him.
Yeah.
Oh, you want us to start doing that? Well, I'm gonna have my team put it together. And then she did the same thing to his dad, but then she takes him under his wing. So it's almost like that was her plan from the very beginning.
Right.
And they do spend a lot of time in the Hunger Games, which are completely different. And I just felt like maybe it was just more expanded. Like the drones play a huge part in the book, as opposed to in the movie. Where the movie they were kind of like a throwaway. Like eventually the first in the book, like the first one crashes, and then after that it seems like they figure it out and they have a better, like they work a little bit better. But then two of the tributes, thank you, in there, they know how to hack technology, and one of them hacks one of the drones, and they're able to change the homing signal to have all the drones go to them. But then it goes haywire, and then it becomes this massive massacre scene where you're watching, because it's around the time where, and I don't remember if I think they changed who gets rabies in the games, but the tribute who has rabies is having that thing with water, so they're sending like all those drones full of water like they did in the movie. It was in the movie it's Jessup, but I don't remember who it is. I don't remember if it's Jessup in the book. And then, so all the drones come, but they, instead of going to who they were supposed to be delivered to, they get delivered to this tribute, and then this tribute just gets massacred by all these drones. And it's just like, it was just one of those like horrific deaths that almost like, I almost wish that
I wish they would have put that
played it out in the books. And also there's a tribute, and I don't remember whose it is, but like the one who lays out the bodies, like that's a really big part of the book, where this, like he grabs the Pan Am thing, but then he, not only does he drape it over the tributes, but he also rips off a piece and uses it as a cape, and he waits and kind of just watches.
Yes.
And like, that's like a really big part where like he's choosing not to be a part of it until he has to be. Where, like, I don't know, like I felt like that was something that there's just way more depth in the book, and I guess it's hard because there's a lot that this movie had to pack into one movie.
And when one of the tributes was the one that was on top of that Stonehenge.
Yeah.
In the book, she was on a pole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh wow.
She's tied and she's strapped.
She's strapped to a pole in the book, up there.
But they do go up both sides, and then they attack her from that way.
They attack her from the side.
Oh, wow.
It just plays out. There's just certain things that just played out a little bit differently between the book and the movie. I felt, and obviously, I mean, the book will always be better, but this was a good streamlined version of the expanded story of the book.
Right. Was there anything else that we might have missed in your notes, Hannah?
Yeah, you can start going.
The other one that I wanted to talk about was in the book, Snow. It was towards the beginning of the book, and when he was becoming a mentor and going to his classes, there was one point where they asked him to sing the anthem on live TV, and so that they didn't do that in the movie. But to me, that part also showcased him as like a setup to, this is one day going to be your president. It was so political how they staged it in the book that they asked him, and he was live, and Lucy Gray watched him. He sang the national or the anthem for Pan Am.
I think that plays into something else that plays into a book where they hint where like deep down, and you hear it through his monologue, his love has always been for the order that the chaos that the capital provides for him. Like he hated the wilderness, he hated the chaos. I mean, and in the book when him and Lucy Gray are out in the woods, and when he's coming back, he has this whole monologue to himself where he's saying, he's like, oh, I'm so glad I can go back and eat, you know, be in this nice room and the air conditioning. He's like, you know, but he really details out like him and Lucy going fish when they're talking about going fishing. In the book they actually go fishing, and then you hear him complaining about getting the worms and being in a room that doesn't have AC, and like really trying, like they spent a lot of time with him trying to come to terms with this being his new life. Like, so when he sees the opportunity to destroy the weapons, you're like, oh well, obviously he's gonna, like, it's very like, I mean, like, oh, he's obviously gonna go back to his new life because he's always valued things from the capital. Because all right, so in the book, what Hannah's talking about also it ties to is Lucy Gray gets invited to perform for Commander Hoff when in District 12, the Coriolanus' commander who he interacts with in the movie. So it's his birthday and they have a birthday celebration, and they hire the Covey to come and perform. So they perform a bunch of songs, and this is actually where she performs the song where she sings to him in the movie, that's Pure as the Driven Snow. The song she specifically writes for him. She performs it there at the commander's birthday celebration. But the other song that she performs is The Hanging Tree. She performs that song for the peacekeepers, and the conversation was, you know, oh, the commander told me that we couldn't perform that song anymore, you know, but obviously since we're, you know, she was like, well, since I'm running away, it doesn't matter anymore. I told the commander, like, you'll never have to hear these words, that song come from my lips ever again. And the conversation was like, Maud Ivory really liked it, and this is back to Coriolanus' love for the capital and order and the peacekeepers, because he goes, well, it is a weird song, like already kind of voicing his disdain for the rebelliousness that the song provides, and ironically later is a song that actually leads to the destruction of the capital, you know, because Katniss uses it as a guiding force to band all the districts together. He's like, it's a weird song, but. And then she was saying how much she liked it because it had, you know, what is the word she used? It was like it had power, it had presence. And Coriolanus in his brain was like, well, and also like rebelliousness. And it's like, well, the song has power, like me performing the anthem of Pan Am. And she's just like, yeah, sure. Like, you know, and then I think but that scene was another hint to Lucy Gray that maybe this guy is not who he says he is, and like her finding out about or putting the pieces together about Serjanus was the last piece of the puzzle. And I had a lot of, when I first read the book, I had a lot of issues with being very vague about what happens to Lucy Gray. But I think because you're coming from the point of Coriolanus at this point in his life, if somebody got away from you and you never heard from them again, like that's what you know. Like that's just all you know. You have these assumptions. And she was a smart girl. She's a survivor. She's not gonna match with you face to face. So if she can get away and run away and never have to see you again, then obviously that's what she's gonna do because she's a survivor. She obviously survived the Hunger Games, and she's obviously extremely intelligent, where she was able to put all these pieces together without being implicitly told. So I had issues with it, but now I think I understand it. I understand why the book ended that way. But it really bothered me at first for her ending to be so vague and like kind of just not, like, we just don't know.
Yeah, there was he went over a lot. But the part that made sense to me, hold on, I just had it and I lost it again. The part where they were having a discussion and like I think they were enjoying. I think Snow said that he wanted to go back to Pan Am at some point. Like this isn't going to be forever. He was going to stay in District 12, and they were having a conversation by the river or by the lake, and like they were kind of like in this picnic area, and enjoying each other's company. And she's like, "Don't you want this? Like, isn't this nice to just be here every day?" And he goes, "No." And I feel like that was just like a very small part of everything that you just said. Like the movie took a very brief amount of time to show that this is not the life for him, and then we just moved on from it. Where you described many scenes from the book that they were alluding that this was coming up. So then when we get to the point where they're walking into the woods, starting their new life together, and he sees the weapons, I just felt all of that was just so quick to me. I was like, to me, it was like, so yeah, this is what we're going to do, or start my little life together. And then he opens the cabin, sees guns. Like, I feel like it was a lot for a person like me who have not read the source material to put all together. He's like, guns, hide guns, go back to my life. Like, I didn't see that happening. And like,
you didn't make that connection.
Not immediately. It's just like, oh, here's the guns. You toss them. I don't know how or why they got here, but here they are. It's kind of just, all of a sudden just happened. I was like, oh yeah, we're starting a new life together, but here are the guns that I used for murder. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I thought that, logically you throw the guns away, I guess, or leave them where you found them, and then you just move on with your life.
Yeah, because in the book, Spruce is supposed to take care of them, and then that's a line in the book when he finds them. She goes, oh, Spruce must have found this here. And then he has a monologue in his head. He's like, well, who else knows about this lake? He's like, who else knows that these guns are here? And then he has that dialogue within himself. Like, everything that you're explaining that they missed out, like, all that was explained through his inner monologue in the book.
Right. And so even going back to Lucy, and Hannah, I'll ask you this question. What do you think it matters what happened to Lucy? Like, do you think it's good that it's vague? Would you want a concrete answer about it? Does it matter for the bigger arc of the story? Like, is it better that we don't know what happened?
In my opinion, I like to, leaving loose ends is, I like to know what happens. It, the loose end of this is that she ran away, made it District 2 and started a family there. I would at least want to know what happened to her, and how her survival, if you will, it is a tie or even connection to Katniss, because she did mention, when she talked about the potatoes, and they're called Katniss, they brought her up several times, and actually it's in my notes to talk about how Lucy Gray even in the trailer and in the movie, she does that bow after she has her performance at 12. And if you remember, Katniss, when she did the arrow to the apple and hitting it in the wall of all those political figures when she was doing her training, and they looked at her, she did the same bow.
Oh, I never even put that
together. Yeah, her and Lucy both did the same bow. But see, there's so many connections that they both ironically did, just little characteristics that I almost wonder if there is a tie somewhere. And that is and going back to your question, I wish I would have known, because I want to know the connection to Katniss with her, or if there's any.
And I think her ending is supposed to be vague, because Professor Gall, she mentions that they erased the Hunger Games, like it's almost like
they did, yeah.
But in the book, he talks about it more. It's like, because nobody was forced to watch in the district. So unless you were really paying attention to it, and I think she wrote it like that on purpose. So like, if you don't hear about it at all in the other book, because obviously these are huge events for them to cover up. So we're basically learning about, like, one of the main cover-ups that the Capitol did, like that, and I think that in itself is something to be said. Like, how much corruption and cover-up is there around so many things that we think are innocuous, or things that we've missed, and it's like, well, they're underneath that layer of what they're intentionally keeping from you was this massive event which could have caused the end of the Hunger Games to begin with.
Right, and it's interesting that you say that, because I didn't realize that they erased all the footage and made sure that the Hunger Games 10 was basically forgotten. I didn't catch that until I watched the video this morning, and someone was explaining that to me, that's what happened in the book, and they might have said it in the movie. I just don't remember it.
See, no, they didn't say. I didn't catch that they said that.
So maybe they didn't say it. See, and that's a big part. That's a big point, because then otherwise, at least people from the Capitol, and he says it. He's like, in a couple years, nobody's going to even remember. There'll be a vague memory of the girl who sang at the Hunger Games, or the girl who sang during the districts. But then even in the book, they talk about making the victor's village and they spend more time emphasizing like the setup that we see where they force everybody to watch and what the Hunger Games actually provides for the districts and like the winnings and the houses and just like making it more of a spectacle. And we see that they were putting them in zoo cages in this one, whereas the last if you look at the Hunger Games, the main storyline, they're putting up in like 5-star hotels and like showcasing them around the world, like really like treating them like superstar athletes.
Yeah, like they said, like even Peter Dinklage says, like, your job is not for them to win. Your job is to make them look like spectacles.
Yeah.
Like, you want for people to watch these. And so, to me, yeah, you would think that in history, how can you not forget? How can you forget about a moment in time like this? But then again, something that happened 65 years ago, I don't know what happened 65 years ago. Obviously, these are just moments that were just forgotten over the years, and the Capitol made sure that because they got the advantage that not a lot of people watched it, and therefore we can easily forget about it. So much so that I remember that Woody Harrelson's character was the only person to ever win from District 12.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like they made a point in that. So when Lucy won, I was like, okay, so she was the first person to win from District 12, not Woody Harrelson. And this makes a lot of sense now. They said, well, we just erased it from history, so therefore people did not know that until Woody Harrelson won at that year. I also found interesting, going back to the Hanging Tree song, for me, and actually maybe seeing people hang, like people getting hung from the tree, like in this movie, is like, oh, like for me the whole song took a completely different meaning than it did in the original Hunger Games films. So I like how we got a different, because I feel like we got a different perspective in this movie, and it was a prequel, that song holds a lot more meaning to me than it did as like a symbol in the Hunger Games. So I do appreciate that. It's kind of in a way, clever writing that it can, say in a different context, it can mean something different, or it means something same, just you look at it a different way than you were before. So I thought harder for me in this movie than it did in the Hunger Games films.
Oh, I agree.
And I wanted to actually, that was another thing I wanted to talk about, was the hanging tree scene. In the book, they spent a lot of time in preparation to the hanging, and then also during the whole scene of the hanging.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt, and this is one thing I wish they would have spent more time in investing in this scene as well, is because the way Coriolanus felt when he got selected to be in charge of the hanging, of standing right there in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And they did have him in the front in the movie, that he was right there in charge. But it talked about how nervous he was, that he didn't feel comfortable holding a gun. He didn't know how to shoot anything, and that he felt that there wasn't any training to help him prepare for that. And that he talked about that in the book. And then also with the Jabberjays, it talked about during the hanging, when Arlo, his last moments before he was hung, his lover, it happened in the movie too, also in the book, she was like, no, he's innocent. And then when he said, in the book, it said, run, Lil, run. And then all the Jabberjays started saying that, and they did it in the movie too, but it was really intense in the book, where they were flying around Coriolanus's head, and they were all screaming that, run, Lil, run. And the author really went into that, talking about how devastating that love story was at the hanging tree, of Arlo being hung, and he was innocent. And that, and it talked about how Coriolanus was staring at the trees, because there was a lot of forests around. And, in District 12, there is a lot of forests. That's where Katniss went hunting with Gale. That there was a lot of Jabberjays in the trees, and they were all staring at the whole scene. And that it made him nervous. Like, it made him uncomfortable. And he was like, we need, and then after he even made a suggestion to the general and said, we should be hunting. We should hunt these for practice, because I'm not feeling comfortable holding a gun. Maybe we should use them as target practice.
Yeah.
And he said that. And so that whole scene, with the birds and the trees, and it really, you sat there and I could imagine all these birds and figures like just staring at you, and then reenacting the hanging. They were screaming, "Run, Lil, run!"
Yeah.
as he was hung.
It's crazy. I mean, you guys are describing a lot of scenes that were in the book to give a lot more context that the movie couldn't provide. And the movie is still 2.5 hours. And it's crazy that they still, within that long run time, still couldn't manage to capture a lot of that. And also, like, if they were to put it in two parts, now I'm even questioning the two-part situation, even though I do think that there's a lot of story there and it could have been in two parts, but I wonder if there wasn't enough to grab people's attention because there was going to be no like games, or maybe the action wasn't going to be there for the second part. So is it hard to ask audiences to come back for a part two when I feel like they would have had to been creating scenes to bring up the action, because I feel like all the action was in part 1 and 2 and then the resolution was in 3 and 4. But in my opinion, I don't think it was worth putting out just the, I feel like there wasn't a lot there in 3 and 4 for them to justify a part 2, from what it sounds like. Because otherwise, there's no action there. It's all just resolution from the part. So maybe in some ways, it's a good thing that we just got one movie out of it. But just based on what you guys are saying, there's a lot in there that it felt like it could have easily been 2. But maybe the filmmakers felt like there wasn't enough in the second half of the book to constitute, maybe the audience's attention to get a second part in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I want to quickly talk about Jason Schwartzman's character, Lucky Flickerman. I thought he was hilarious. I thought he brought a lot of levity to the scenes where most of this movie was kind of dark. But he brought some levity to it, so I had a good time just watching him just kind of be a goofball as a host.
What?
Do it. You gotta do it.
No,
you gotta do the whole thing. You gotta do the whole thing.
No, I did it already. All right, you got one. You get one.
Yeah, get one.
I liked how he really leaned into it. Like when he came up, he had this one pun about somebody's death, and he was like, yeah, you could see that he felt really good about himself when he said that. I was like, such bad taste.
Well, but it's just kind of give credit to his acting, because the shot was like a close up, and after he said it, to your point, there was they held on it just a little bit longer, and he gave a little smirk.
Yeah,
like you said, he was proud of himself for saying that joke, which I can relate to. I say bad jokes all the time, and then I let myself I'm gonna own that one because it was funny.
It's mine.
He did his laugh.
He did he did a very small version of his Hunger Games laugh that he does in that Stanley Tucci does in the Hunger Games movie.
And I go ahead. Sorry.
I thought he did a great job, whether it was on purpose or not, of capturing a younger. I don't think it's a young version of Stanley Tucci because it's 65 years, but either way, he captured that essence that Stanley Tucci brought to the original Hunger Games movies.
But it is Lucky Flickerman in the actual Hunger Games. But I mean, how
is
old?
It?
Yeah, right. Isn't Lucky Flickerman in?
I'm gonna look that up because there's 65 years. He would be a lot older than that, unless he's. But no, it says Caesar Flickerman. So
maybe it's a son.
Maybe
his son.
Oh, we're gonna look that up. I did want to talk about. They spent. I thought it was really funny. We Ernesto and I were like, it's not funny, isn't funny, but it was it's crazy that there's tributes, and we're in the final scenes of the Hunger Games with Lucy and maybe 2 or 3 tributes left. Mm-hmm. And you hear, Flickerman go, "Oh, well, I need a drink. Oh, I'm not going to be able to make my dinner tonight." And how it just was that they were just so disposed of. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking how they just thought of tributes as as part of an entertainment.
They were just pawns.
Yeah.
Pawns of this whole situation. Yeah.
Depending on when this thing's going to end, it might be 2 and a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to quickly talk about the box office numbers that this movie received. It looks like it was $44 million opening weekend. I don't think it says on Box Office Mojo, but I remember reading that it was it doesn't say it on there. But I think it collected 98 million worldwide from what I read. So I'm not sure why Box Office Mojo is not collecting those numbers.
Yeah, we don't have the international. Kind of weird. We don't have the international numbers yet.
Yeah, but from the Variety article that I read, they collected 98 million worldwide. So But either way, I guess a pretty solid start. I think it's one of the lower in the franchise. I mean, when you take a long break from the Hunger Games to ask people to come back, also you're dealing with the holidays right now for Thanksgiving. So even though a lot of people do go to the movies, but I think what it's saving grace is that the budget for this movie was only $100 million. So also congrats to them to making such a massive movie and such a tight budget like that. So like they can easily come back and like if it is in fact 98 worldwide, they've already made their budget in the first weekend.
Yeah.
And now I think they're on the road for profit at this point.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good sign that if they, for whatever reason, want to sequelize this, they could. Now we know that the author, what's her name, Suzanne Collins, did not write anything more than just the 3 books and the prequel. But if she wants to come back and maybe take like a screenwriting role to continue these stories in film, then I'm about it, because I think there's still a lot more that you can tell within this world. I'm not sure if specifically with Snow, but I think we can. I don't mind coming back to this world to expand on certain characters that we haven't seen, like to expand on other characters that we've seen from the movies. But Hannah, we'll start with you on your final thoughts.
Yeah, so I had a couple of things I did want to talk about. Coriolanus and his motivation and how he changed over. So I wrote in here. We call it in costume training. So it's when you're going through, as a leader, you're going through different role types to understand what that person's to understand with each. For example, you're over in, I put that he was in many roles as a mentor. He took on as a mentor. And then he also was poor. So he lived in a poor setting, in a poor household. So he understood what it was like being poor. He understood what it was like being a mentor. And then he was a peacekeeper. So then he understood what it was like in the life of a peacekeeper. And so he took many roles as now as he is the president. So that just in itself, in my opinion, sets you up as a successful leader. You understand each of where your country is and understand the roles within the country. So I wrote that down as one of them.
You see all different facets of it, and what your role is and how it'll affect all those other things.
Yes. So I wanted to talk about that, just in general of him. It put him in the perfect position later as a president.
And then we come to find out that it was Dr. Gall's planning altogether. Like she was basically pulling the strings from behind the scenes from the very beginning.
Yeah, and kind of like she said at the end of the movie, like this was all part of my plan, and you pass with flying colors, basically.
Yeah.
So now we have time to train you up and be who you are.
Yeah, Coriolanus is Darth Vader, and she's Emperor. She's Emperor Palpatine.
And
you know what? I never thought of it that way, but that's exactly what happened.
And his poisoning that continues. If you in one of the movies, I believe it's the Mockingjay Part 1. Where he poisons a bunch of political figures. They were all having dinner at the table, and they were all drinking their wine. Like they were cheering to what was going on, and that they thought that they were able to. They thought they got Katniss at that point. They were bombing that district, the secret district, and they were all cheering. Well, Coriolanus, President Snow, he poisoned them all. So that poisoning is something that he continued to use as a weapon towards his enemies. So I wrote that down to talk about. But yeah, Katniss, the relationship between, the identity between Katniss and Lucy, Katniss leading up to the revolution, she, people believed in her. People saw her as, as a role model, as a leading figure. And even President Snow's, I think he did have children, because remember he had a granddaughter. He was like her hair. Remember she had her hair like Katniss's hair.
Maybe. I'd have to either rewatch the movies or reread the books to get a full assessment. Which eventually I think I want to do. I do think I want now that I've seen Coriolanus's backstory, I've reread his book. Now I want to reread the original Hunger Games books, kind of with that maybe with his perspective, after knowing his story and knowing about the 10th Hunger Games, to see if she put any seedlings of what this story is in there. If he mentions Lucy Gray, or if he mentions this about the 10th Hunger Games, or if there's any mention to this book in the trilogy.
Yeah, and going back to the connection between Lucy and Katniss and many similarities that they have, I mean, you can see it as one of maybe two ways. One, you can maybe see it as like this is like a trait in District 12, and so like since they were both born and raised there, even though they're different time periods, there's certain essences in District 12 that just kind of carries on. One being the song and maybe the attitude that you have toward like that you brought onto yourself. Or you can see it as there's a direct line to it, and I was reading a little bit about it, and some people theorize that could possibly be like Katniss's grandmother. They just never stated it. I feel like that's a loose theory, but
yeah.
I feel like there's like, for example, if Lucy had the idea to name if Lucy had a fascination for Katniss, I can see that somebody else from District 12 having the same fascination of Katniss and then naming their child after that as well. So like the same thing with having a connection with the song. Like if she had it living in District 12, then somebody else could have it as well. So I think she just captured the essence of what District 12 was, and then that could carry on to like with the Hunger Games and with Katniss. So I guess you can see it as both ways on that.
Yeah. And then another important piece of the book that, they brushed on as well in the movie was the roses. So the roses in the book, his grandmother had roses on the roof, and their roof was a flat roof. So she grew roses everywhere on top of where they lived. And so, that was something that symbolized you heard it in the movie, that when he was smelling the mom's scarf, she said it smells like roses. So, that when that scarf, when he picked it up later in the movie, and he smelt it, and it had filth and dirt, and I don't know, that to me was like, it was like a shift and change of his character at that point. Like, he was completely gone at that point. Like, who he was, he was just like his father at that point. And even, Tigress even said, at the end of the movie, she said, you look just like your father. And I think that was something that, sat on me for a while and I had to think about.
Yeah, because Tigress said it in a way where, like, it can be looked as like an appealing thing, but it was also a thing of like I was, this is not the person who I wanted you to become, but you are now your father. Now you are your father's son. I mean, and it's just I think it just shows how the Hunger Games affected him, where he talks about like, how quickly that deep down inside, just to remind us of our true behavior. And this is, look what happened to him. He had his innocence robbed of him. He had to go in and kill somebody. And then that slowly changed him and gave him a better understanding of not even of the Hunger Games, but of how Dr. Gall wanted him to see the Hunger Games. And then that sets up to the President Snow, who we see today, who we saw until his end.
So I guess, again, kind of overall, your final thoughts on like does this hold up as well as the book? I guess that's what it comes down to.
Oh, I mean, if it's a question if it holds up to the book, it's kinda. Like, they hit a lot of the big themes, but I think they miss the beauty that the book comes across. Like, and I think that's just because of the time that they had, the constraints that they had.
And Dr. Gall's mythical characters, if you will, her lab created, animals. So she in the book, her snakes, when they bit Clemencia's her arm.
Oh yeah.
She in the book they spend a while at the hospital when Coriolanus was recovering from the bombing, and that he was asking about how Clemencia was doing, and he finally got to see her in the hospital, which they left us out in the movie. But her back, she was turning into a snake. Yeah, she had scales on her back. And she was trying to recover from, and she had lost it. Like, she was not in her mindset at all.
And I think for us, it was just to show the audience, like this is the lengths of what Professor Gall, like this is the true extent of her evil. Like, look what she was willing to do to one of her own students. Now, can you imagine what she really has in store for what she wants to do in the games? So I think in that sense, I think they hit some of the points from the book, but I think if you like this movie, then you should 100% read the book, because the book is so good. Like, this book, like, it really explores power. It kind of touches on classism and kind of like how the rich can see the poor, and like maybe what they really think of, it's an incredible book. I just love the themes that they put across, and just everything they were able to put in there, and kind of the parallels you're able to draw even to our normal day life, and kind of how like we see the world and different things like that. So it doesn't necessarily hold up to the book, but it is a good movie version. And I think that's I feel the same way about the actual Hunger Games movies. I like them, but they are not the book. Like, they're also a streamlined versions of the book, whereas the book gives you way more context, and you're able to really learn about these characters. But this film did a great job of making us. There was nobody who I was checked out on, like you said. Like, I was fully invested in all these characters. The problem is that I wanted more. From this film, and as opposed to like being checked out or being bored. Like, I just wanted them to give me more. Like, I would have sat through another 30 to 40 minutes of it. Like, we're already here for 2.5 hours. Like, we're already strapped in. So, you could have given us a little bit more. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I think that the book and the movie, it really explains and sets up to how the Hunger Games were when Katniss was selected as a tribute, or when her sister was, and she volunteered as tribute. Because, looking back when, Snow was a mentor, and how the whole setup was, they were in this this old arena that later gets, that's bombed, and now they're having to throw the Hunger Games in there. To now, they have, they had it staged as like, and it was filmed in North Carolina, which I thought was cool. But when Katniss did her first Hunger Games, the whole thing was a computerized setup, and they had all these hybrid animals and different, things that were attacking them. Like, they had the wasp. Where they
tracker jackers.
All those hybrid like animals and insects, it just all goes back to understand. Okay, well, Dr. Gall was already creating or formulating,
right?
And that's something I really liked, is that they did touch on a lot of things that you're like, I wonder how that even started. Like, okay, now it makes sense. Dr. Gall was really focused and intended on her creations.
Yeah.
What as far as the movies are concerned, now we're just talking about the movies, not the books. Do you feel like this movie holds up with the original 4 movies?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think so. I think especially at the very end. At the end of the movie, you hear Donald Sutherland's voice.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, in case you forgot, we're connected to those other 4 movies.
Right,
so I think this is the Hunger Games. It's almost like there's a book universe and there's a movie universe. That's I think that's how I just have to look at it. And then this is part of, this is obviously with using Donald Sutherland's voice, like, it is a direct connection to the other 4 movies. So I think it holds up. I think the movies are good. I think this is a good book. I think this is a great movie series. But if you are interested in this, if you like the series, then you should 100% read the books.
Yeah, and as far as my final thoughts, I feel like that I really like the movie. I didn't love it. Wasn't over the moon about it, but I feel like that's my thought about Hunger Games all in general. I really enjoyed the first movie, and I thought the second movie really brought it as well. But when it started diving into the revolution of it all in Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, in my opinion, they didn't quite stick the landing in Part 2 as much as I wanted it to.
Yeah.
So therefore, like, I just remember the series, like the first 4 movies, just like as a whole, as like they were good and I liked them, but it didn't stick the landing for me. So therefore, I kind of just like, they were movies, and I'll probably go back and rewatch them eventually. Maybe when I'm older, I might get a different opinion. But I just remember like Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 just didn't strike like the excitement that I had for the first two movies. That being said, I feel like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes really encapsulated all the best parts about the Hunger Games.
Yes.
Like you got the political drama, you got the games itself, you got the internal struggle between the classes and the districts, and I think it was like, even though again 2.5 hours, and you guys explained that they miss a lot from the book, I think it did a decent job.
Yeah.
Kind of getting all that together, compiling it into a 2.5 hour film, and I think it was 100% elevated by like I said, the powerhouse performances from everybody.
Absolutely.
Like I think that they carried this movie to what it is, and I think the costume design and the production design really worked with it as well. So like I had a good time coming back to the world of Pan Am, and like I said, if they came out with more, I'm here for it. I'm not going to be mad about it. There's no more books to go off from, but that doesn't mean they can't start doing things on their own specifically for the movie.
I want a Haymitch story.
Yeah, yeah, I would love that.
I want to see him. I want to see what he went through for the Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm. Like I feel like there's a lot to pick off. Like there's a lot to choose from if they wanted to expand.
True.
And I think Susanna Collins has like final say. So if she wants no more, then there's no more. But if she wants to expand, then I think it's safe to say that we're here for it. But definitely a good movie. It was definitely a good movie. I'm not going to say that it was bad. Because there was a lot that I enjoyed about it. Just for me, again, I feel like it just didn't nail the landing. For me, like I got the beats that they were going for, but like the final, like it just felt a little bit rushed, especially with the climax of her leaving and him going insane. It just didn't hit as hard as maybe I wanted it to. And then that the rest of the movie toward the end, it got me back up a little bit when he like killed Peter Dinklage's character. But after that, like, based on what you guys were saying, I think it would have hit a lot harder if we just had a quick epilogue of him, like, taking the reins of power and, like, making those changes, like you were saying, making it mandatory to watch the games and making these more spectacles than they were before. If they had, instead of him looking at a statue, then I feel like that would have been more of like, man, this guy this guy's creating some mayhem. And then we go into the Hunger Games proper and we can see that 64 years later. So I almost wish we just got a little bit more of that. Keep the runtime, just give us a little bit more on that. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to talk about with the, at the end where he does his quote, it's the things we love the most that destroy us. I almost think that I'm trying to like wrap my mind around that statement, because he, that's one of Snow's, quotes that he says even towards Katniss, is I think that in my opinion was towards Lucy, right? So that he's blaming it that on her is the reason why he is now who he is. Yeah. And that's and I think that I'm glad that they put that towards the end, because it puts you back in perspective of, he's a villain. He killed a lot of innocent people. And that, he's psychopath, so, but I think that the quote that resonates perfectly with how he mentally changed with her interaction. So.
Yeah. And I think that was a good way to end the movie, especially with Sutherland's voice kind of capping it all off. But anyway, there you go. That's our spoiler review on The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Hannah, thank you very much for joining us and kind of doing a deep dive into the Hunger Games series. And finally, after 4 long-awaited years, you're back on the show. And hopefully this won't be the last time we have you on.
Oh, I'm coming back.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. This literally show would not be here without you and everything you're doing behind the scenes to make sure that Ernesto's out here and we can just have fun just talking about movies.
I love it though.
I was gonna say, Ernesto, what we can look forward to next week, but I don't think we've made that decision.
I don't think we've talked about it yet. Actually, we haven't. This was kind of like our endpoint.
Wish is coming out next week.
Yeah, but we don't know. We don't know yet. We have to go over our schedule and then we'll figure
it out. but you know what? Wish is a good option.
Wish is a good option.
It's up there. But it could be Wish. It could not be. You have to come back next week and find out. But if you want more from us, as always, you can go to our social media channels and follow us everywhere that's on your screen on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterbox page at Box Office Binger without the S, and our Instagram and Threads page at boxoffice_bingers. Find us all the way over there. More movie fun continues from there. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for just coming and just listening to us just talk about movies. Really do appreciate it. Again, Hannah, thank you very much for joining us for the first time. Hopefully the first of many. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Ernesto Santos. See ya.